Hello everyone, and welcome to Phantasy Star Online, a game that has held a special place in my heart for many years, as it's the first game where I ever actually spent time interacting with others online. And it's something I'm extremely nostalgic about, so I want to actually share it with my viewers, even if it's going to be a bit of a long ride. Now, the only question is, which version of the game to play? There's so many! There's version 1 for the Dreamcast, there's version 2 for the Dreamcast, there was a PC port of version 2, there's the Xbox version, there's the first GameCube version of episodes 1 and 2, there's episodes 1 and 2 plus for the GameCube, and now there's Blue Burst! Sega definitely had quite a few iterations of this game, however, they actually seem to keep improving with every iteration. So as a result, I am going to play the Blue Burst version, but I'm also going to share some footage from the GameCube version to show a few little differences here and there, as that's the Plus version is what I currently have on hand, as it's the version of the game I played the most back in the day. So without any further interludes, let's get started! Now, what exactly you'll see when starting the game will depend on what version of the game you're playing. I'm going to go over the GameCube one first, as this one's actually more designed to be an offline single-player game, so it starts out a bit more user-friendly as opposed to the Blue Burst version, which expects you to be connecting and playing off of a server immediately. Starting out with the GameCube version will get you this episode selection screen. We'll be starting with episode 1, and then doing both 2 and 4 afterwards. The GameCube version of the game also starts you out by giving a little explanation of the story so far, and gives you a task to go do, as opposed to the Blue Burst version, which just asks you basically to make your own game room and just go to it from there. Now, while I have skipped over character creation, I'll be going over that in detail, as well as describing what each of the classes does and their importance and unique abilities in more detail in the next video. In the meantime, let's transition over to Blue Burst and see how it starts us out there. Back over on Blue Burst, after you've created a game lobby and started the game, you start off in the Hunter's Guild instead of the Principal's office. At the Hunter's Guild, you actually go here if you want to take any quests instead of just playing through the normal area. The desk over here will actually have all the quests for you, whether it's the side story quests from the GameCube version of the game, Blue Burst's added in story quests, or just taking the other general quests. But for now, let's just go down to the first area of the game, the forest. Now, normally you'd have to unlock these stages individually by completing the previous one before it, but in some versions of Blue Burst, they've just been unlocked for you by default. Now, unless you take the battle training quest from the Hunter's Guild from the side story selection, then you don't get any sort of tutorial in this game whatsoever. Instead, you're just dumped right in and you have to figure it out yourself. The controls are very basic though. If you look in the lower right hand corner, that's what they refer to as the action palette. The layout of the buttons is actually identical to a 360 controller if you need a reference for it. So it gives you the display there. But if you want to change these, you can actually go into the main menu and go into customization. And here you can change up the action palette to whatever you want it to be. Now, my own preference for the action palette is to have all the attacks on the main palette. All three versions, normal, heavy, and special. And for the secondary palette, I usually have some form of healing, and in the case of droids, they're traps, the freeze trap and the confuse trap, which I will go over in more detail at a different time. The combat controls in this game are significantly less obvious than the basic controls. Every weapon, except for a few exceptions, has a basic 3-hit combo that they can perform, like this. In order to do this combo, you have to time your button presses so they're being pressed immediately after your previous attack is finished. If you press it too early or double tap, then the animation is not going to go off and you only get one attack. You can also perform a heavy attack, which is a more powerful attack but also far less accurate. This here is a disc for learning the technique Foy, which is one of the magic abilities you can use in this game. However, all android classes are not able to use magic, they only have the traps that I had shown earlier instead. With all of that out of the way, we can get to our first enemy, the Booma. They're really harmless, all they really do is slowly try to walk up towards you and slap you. They don't have too much HP, but it still takes a full combo to take them down. This is probably the most basic enemy type in the game by far, as really that's all they do is walk up and try to slap you. I like to call them the basic slappies, because every stage seems to have at least one of them. Now, an important thing to note about your combos is the further into the combo you get, the more accurate your attacks will get. So trying to use a heavy attack on the first attack is probably not a good idea, and the second's a little risky, but on the third attack it should be pretty much guaranteed, unless your accuracy is really bad. Next up in terms of enemies, we have the Savage Wolf. This enemy type is a little more complicated, as they try to circle around you and then pounce when they see an opportunity. If they're behind you, they'll pretty much try to attack right away. But they'll still try, even if they're in front of you. They're not all that threatening, but they're still more of a threat than Boomas, it's just they should probably be focused down if possible. Especially if they're being a pain in the butt, like that. Come on, boy, sit! Just hold still and let me slap you. Jeez, I'm not asking for much, really. Much like any other RPG, certain classes can only equip certain weapons. Although it's not such a bad idea to pick these up anyways, as you're going to need the money from selling them off early on in the game. Oh, the Monist. Designed just to get in your way and waste time. It has a very long summoning animation, and it just likes to spew out all these little Mothmans to try and get in your way. If you want to make it as little of a hassle as possible, try to take out the nest as soon as you can, as it will keep on spewing out new Mothmans for a limited number of them, but it's still a good number of them. They try to cause the threat in numbers by surrounding you, but they're usually pretty harmless and have very low attack power compared to some of the enemies in this forest. Leveling up is exactly what you expect from this game. Defeat enough enemies, get the experience points necessary, and gain a few stats. Not exactly thrilling, but, you know, just standard stuff. The EXP curve, on the other hand, in this game is extremely harsh, and while the early levels will come fairly quickly and rapidly, the later few levels just get absolutely obscene in terms of how much EXP it requires. Laser gates are pretty simple. Press a switch that has a particular color on it, and the laser that matches that color will be deactivated. Oh, the sound of the mana slowing down drives Rome absolutely crazy in this game. But let's talk a little bit about the safety of using your combo. While going for a full combo is good and all, it can actually leave you in a pretty unsafe position if the enemy doesn't die from it. So if you want to take it a little safer and you're sure that the enemy's not actually going to die off from one combo, then just try to end on your second attack, and this has a much faster recovery time than both the first and the last attack of your combo. Doing this, and especially using a hard attack as the second attack, you can swat the enemy away so you can quickly run off and get into a better position before using another one. And here we have our first ranged weapon, the handgun. While I am playing as a hunter, and they do excel in melee, thus meaning their accuracy is not too great for ranged weapons, they're still extremely useful to have, as sometimes they're enemies that you simply do not want to be battling close up. So it's always good to still have a ranged weapon in your repertoire at all times. I swear to God, wolves, if you keep giving me trouble like this, I'm gonna swat you. Well, I already am, but that's beside the point. Speaking of wolves, here's the barbarous wolf. It does the exact same thing, except sometimes it'll actually howl, causing its entire pack to receive a debuff for some reason. I guess they were trying to make it a buff. Now, droids actually have the traps, as I mentioned before, which are very good for dealing with larger crowds. You have the freeze, damage, and confuse traps, the freeze traps being one of the most handy, as it will freeze the enemy in place for an extended period of time. There are some enemies who are immune to freeze, but it's extremely few, so let's go ahead and try it out on any enemy group that's giving you trouble. Meseta is this game's currency of choice. It's not terribly useful. Early on it's important, as you won't have very much of it, but later on, especially in higher difficulties, you'll be practically swimming in excess Meseta to the point where it'll be driving you crazy because it's only used for buying consumables and using as ammo for certain weapons. Aww, look at the little Ragagraffy. Yeah, they're cute and all, but they can poke the hell out of you on higher difficulties. They're still pretty harmless on normal, though. They act just like the Boomas in that they walk up and try to poke you. Speaking of Boomas, go Booma, go Booma, go! Go Booma, go Booma, go! Whack me! Yeah, you didn't do so well, did you? The Go Booma is the exact same thing as the regular Booma, except it's a little stronger. That's really it. It also has a different elemental weakness for those playing forces and trying to actually use magic for damage. Another droid-specific ability that makes items useless is their natural ability to see traps, although trap visions aren't very helpful anyways. Traps can be extremely annoying, so it's good to be able to see them. Now, while droids do have a lot of advantages, it's to make up for the huge gap of not being able to use magic. There are a lot of magic spells that help a lot, especially when you're by yourself, such as the healing spell Resta, as well as the buffs and debuffs to keep you a lot stronger than the enemies, and to prevent them from doing enormous amounts of damage. This all combines to give the droids quite a rough time on some of the harder areas. I would say that accuracy is probably the most important stat in this game, as missing an enemy is just brutal because it just leaves you completely open for attack when you are trying to strike. It's not so bad if you're playing a range class, but if you're playing melee, you can't afford to miss, or you're just gonna get smacked right in the face and land on your butt in no time. Try to get accustomed to what you can pull off on each enemy, such as being able to do a hard attack for the second and third hit, or just the third hit. It'll really help you out in not getting hit too often and saving a lot of your healing items or TP. While running about the forest, I picked up a few things of equipment to take a look at. Just go to the equipment menu here in your item pack, and you can be able to look over all your armors and shields that you picked up, and figure out which one you want to equip. Now stats will vary slightly, but it's just defensive power and evasion, so it doesn't matter too much. However, go ahead and equip whichever one is best for you right now. Red portals are the portals that will take you further into the stage, such as this portal to Forest 2. Keep an eye out for them, as it's your only way to move forward.